I'm going to show you how to make a very light, fluffy body butter, which you can put anywhere on your body, including your hair. This stuff is great for healing old scars, preventing stretch marks, and is overall good for the skin. With that, let's get started. In this tutorial, I'm using a flexible spatula, tempered glass containers, tempered measuring cup, electric mixer, a large mixing bowl, thermometer. These are some examples I have: coconut oil, cocoa butter, shea butter, and beeswax. Here I have olive oil, jojoba oil, almond oil, and avocado oil. You only need to pick one liquid and one solid to make your body butter. You will need some sort of stove, in which case you could put your measuring cup directly in boiling water to heat it up, or you can simply use a microwave. The first step when starting out is to simply clean everything off. You do not want any bacteria or dust particles getting in your body butter. Next step is to measure out all of your liquid oils and set them aside. For this basic recipe, this will yield 1 1/8 cup body butter. I am using 3/8 total cups of liquid. If you have just one liquid, make it all 3/8. In this case, I'm using 3 separate liquids, so I'm going to split them out into an 1/8 cup each. So I'm going to do that now and put them in this container and just set them aside. For this next step, I'm going to be measuring out my solids. So what I'm going to do is start out with this 1/4 cup of coconut oil. I'm going to pile in the solids into this measuring cup, melt it, and then see where it ends up on my scale. If you're using cocoa butter in your recipe, I would not suggest using a knife unless you're very careful, because it'll fracture all of a sudden and you could slip and accidentally cut yourself. So I just use a spoon to break it up into little pieces. As you continue to measure your solids, your measuring cup might start to get very hot at the handle, so it's probably best to use a towel or something to protect your skin. Here's an example of how hot the cocoa butter is getting right now. If you're using beeswax in your recipe, it might help to get a cutting board and a large knife, get on one edge, and just slowly rock back and forth. Make sure your hand is nowhere near the cutting surface of the blade, and if you're lucky, it'll slowly start just chipping off. Like this, little chips will come off. Also, one suggestion I have is, depending on how raw your beeswax is, there might still be particles in the inside. So what I do is I have a filter. It's probably best to use cheesecloth, but I have paint strainer as a substitute. So to use this to filter all those particles out when you're pouring it into your other solids. As you can see, there's a bunch of particles that could have ended up in your body butter. At this point, you should have 2 different containers, one with your recently melted solids and your room temperature oils. So what I like to do is heat both up to 120 degrees. That way, when you mix them together, the solids that you just melted won't immediately solidify back to room temperature and create chunks in your mixture. At this point, both of your containers should be relatively warm. This one is 135, this one's 150. So now I'm going to mix. Now that you've mixed them together, I suggest letting it sit until it reaches roughly 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and then put it into your mixing bowl. Now that it's cooled enough in the glass container, I'm going to pour it into the mixing bowl and let it cool further. Once the mixture has solidified, you can start mixing it with your electric mixer until it becomes soft and fluffy. At this point, you are done mixing. It should be very light and fluffy, and you can put it in a container now. If this video was helpful, please like and subscribe.